And an important group behind them, the Combat Stress, as it's called, who try to look after people who have problems resulting from the stress of being in battle. This is a courageous attempt to try and deal with and take seriously the issue of combat stress. And the first column has gone past, and we will have a second column with the various Guards regiments, but let's just join Sophie Rayworth again down there as the columns go past. Sophie.
Yes, we are right in the thick of it in Whitehall here. I'm here with Richie Puttock, who served with the Royal Marines. It is extraordinary, the atmosphere here, isn't it?
Yes, Sophie, it's incredible. We've had the very solemn and the very dignified service, and there's a very noticeable change of tone now that the veterans in the other organisations are starting to march. It's much lighter, it's lifted, and you can almost feel the pride with the people that are marching and the respect from the members of the public as they're applauding them.
I think you really can feel the pride. I mean, it's humbling to be here. It's humbling to watch all these people, young and old, walking past the Cenotaph.
As Peter Norton said earlier, it's that shared experience that bonds everyone together that's marching today, and the members of the public who come to see them to pay their respects. It's fantastic to see.
And that is a very important point, isn't it? Because rounds of applause, you can hear it all the time now, and a lot of public who have turned out, who've been here since very early this morning to show their support to all these former servicemen and women.
It's hugely important to the people that have served, and I guess that because these people have been here for so long, it's hugely important to them as well. So, you know, it is fantastic to see the support that people have shown, and long may it continue.
And what about for the people who are still serving? What does this show of support mean to them?
I believe it shows them that the work they do is very valued, and sometimes when you are a long way away from home, it can be quite easy to forget that the general public back at home are behind the armed forces 100%, and I believe that this shows the people that are still serving that they are supported, they are backed, and they are very, very well respected.
Richie Puttock, thank you.
You may just have seen there the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers, while Sophie was talking, wearing red and white roses, which they did when they were prisoners of war in Korea in 1951. They made them of paper, and now it's something they proudly wear. And so we go on, the Green Howards, the Duke of Wellington's regiment, and the Cheshire Regiment Association. The red and white hackles of the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers. The Parachute Regimental Association in their maroon berets, a large contingent here. 8 Parachute Regiment members have died since last Remembrance Sunday, but the first big raids by the Parachute Regiment, Italy, Sicily, North Africa, and the 1st Divisional Airborne Operation, the landings in Normandy. They were, not surprisingly, known by the German army as the Red Devils. Special Air Service Regimental Association follows them, the Royal Scots Regimental Association. Applause there from the General who was putting his wreath on the Cenotaph earlier on. The Black Watch Association now, we may be able to see the familiar figure of Joe Hubble leading them. 25 battalions of the Black Watch served in World War I. They got battle honours in Mons and Ypres and Loos and Somme and the Hindenburg Line. And then in the Second World War, famous for the breakout from Tobruk, where their pipe major played almost continuously for 22 miles under heavy fire. And the Gordon Highlanders. There among them carrying the wreath, the Queen Mother's former piper, Pipe Major John Spoor. And the garden is growing, or the field of remembrance, perhaps we should call it, at the foot of the cenotaph. Prosaic perhaps, but vital, the Army Catering Corps Association, still feeding troops in Afghanistan. Created in 1941 when they realized that the food provided by individual regiments wasn't adequate and you needed a proper part of the army or special service to do this. And the Royal Pioneers follow them, an armed labor force whose job was to guard prisoners and move stores and make roads and airfields. REME, the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers Association.
Left, right, left, left.
They're in Afghanistan. They have 600 engineers out there at any one time. There's a father and son marching here with 50 years service in the REME between them. They were formed in 1942, and one of their first major operations was at the Battle of El Alamein. And so the Royal Military Police have passed through, not perhaps the most popular, but a very important part of the services. Queen Alexandra's Royal Army Nursing Corps Association, founded way back in 1902, but still now working, based at the Field Hospital in Cape Baston and other forward operating bases in Afghanistan. And the head of the column is now reaching Horse Guards. This is where we are now, because the march past, as I said, doesn't end at the Cenotaph. It goes down the bottom of Whitehall and comes out here where the Prince of Wales is now taking the salute. And by the way, if you want to watch that part of the commemoration this year, for the very first time after this program ends, you can, if you're watching digitally, push the red button and see the remainder of the march past, the Prince of Wales there, taking the salute on Horse Guards. And back here in Whitehall, the Gurkha Brigade Association. 200,000 Gurkhas fought in the two world wars. And there's still huge competition in Nepal. 28,000 people apply for 200 jobs each year. Famous, of course, because they have the slogan, "Better to die than be a coward," and they terrify the enemy with their 18-inch long kukris, the traditional weapon, the curved knife. The British Gurkha Welfare Society behind them, who look after the Gurkhas, not those who've come here to Britain, where many of them have suffered some hardship, but those who remain in Nepal. There are few people more admired and braver than those who have to dispose of the high-threat improvised explosive devices, the IEDs. And these are the Association of Ammunition Technicians, clearly with some children of fathers who've been killed in this work in Afghanistan, some of the most dangerous work there is. They're part of the Royal Logistic Corps. A mother and son who we talked to last year, I think, during this Cenotaph ceremony. The Women's Royal Army Corps Association, the WRAC Association. In 1917, they were recruited into the army for the first time during the First World War. But now disbanded, they joined the army directly. And then the 656 Squadron Association, the Army's first operational Apache attack helicopter unit, which Prince Harry, of course, is working with at the moment. It's seen 3 tours in Helmand Province. They were deployed also in the Falklands, and in the Second World War served in India and Burma and Java and Sumatra and Malaya. With the armbands behind, the Home Guard Association, the 1.5 million who volunteered to serve in the Home Guard in the event of a German invasion. The Army Air Corps Association. These people were crucial on D-Day because they were the people who landed the gliders at Pegasus Bridge in Normandy and allowed men of the Oxford and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry to go into battle just 20 yards from Pegasus Bridge and have many other honours to their name. And now the Royal Air Forces Association, we move to detachments from the Royal Air Force. The Royal Air Force Association maintaining huge numbers in Afghanistan, part of the NATO operation this year to protect the civilian population of Libya. This is a charity, incidentally. It looks after members of the Royal Air Force. Has over 100,000 members. Claims to be the largest single ex-services association. And the RAF Regiment Association follows them, which particularly distinguished itself in Monte Cassino and at the Normandy landings, and in Burma and Mike Tila, where it counterattacked against Japanese forces who were trying to capture their airstrip. The RAF Regiment, who are, in a sense, the military force of the Royal Air Force. The 7 Squadron Association of Bomber Command, which today operates Chinook helicopters. It's the oldest bomber squadron, formed in 1914 in Farnborough during World War I, and in the Second World War equipped with the Hampden bomber, the Stirling, and then the Lancaster, which acted as a pathfinder marking targets for other aircraft to bomb. Let's go back to Sophie.
And I'm here with Richie Puttock from the Royal Marines Association. It's striking how many service charities are represented here this year.
Yes, Sophie, I think more than ever before. I think in recent years there has been a reinvigoration of pride in belonging to a service charity or a regimental association, and a lot of that is due to the public support that the forces now have.
And you know how important all those charities are because you work first-hand with injured servicemen and families who've lost people.
Absolutely, Sophie. It's not just about the money. The charity that I work for, its remit hasn't changed in the 65 years that it's existed. It's to support former Royal Marines, serving Royal Marines and their families for a lifetime. We have a saying, once a Marine, always a Marine, and we believe in that very deeply. But for all of the service charities, they face challenges in the years ahead. But with the support we have now of the public, I think we'll get there.
Certainly a huge amount of support here today. Thank you very much.
John Nichol, one of the 3 Gulf War ex-POWs, who was shot down in his tornado and held prisoner and tortured, leads the Royal Air Force Ex-Prisoner of War Association. The majority of the members of the Ex-Prisoner of War Association were prisoners in Germany, where 10,000 airmen of the command were held, mostly in Stalag Luft 3 and Stalag Luft 6. The RAF Police Association, the RAF Nursing Association, the Bomber Command Association, who incidentally are hoping to have finished by next year their war memorial in Green Park. They're followed by the Royal Observer Corps and RAF Ling Association, first time on parade here, linguists who learnt Russian and other languages and served through the Cold War. And the next column is led by St. Dunstan's, the charity. Its wreath bearer, Rob Long, who's just 24 years old and who was injured in Afghanistan, said had brought him back his independence. St. Dunstan's, followed by the Ulster Defence Regiment, Irish Defence Forces Veterans UK, the Northern Ireland Veterans Association, and now SAFA, the Soldiers, Sailors, Airmen and Families Association. Forces helps 50,000 people a year and operates homes near Headley Court, where the rehabilitation of the Afghanistan veterans is taking place. The South Atlantic Medal Association here, Julian Thompson, who was in charge of 3 Commando Brigade, the first ashore in the operation to regain the Falklands. People who were involved in the rescue of troops from the bombed ship Sir Galahad. 255 British servicemen lost their lives in the Falklands operation. The ex-Polish Combatants Association, with their red and white armbands led by Captain Klonowski. 500,000 Poles fought under British command in World War II, and the Polish Air Squadron 303 particularly revered for downing more aircraft than any other squadron. 9 of its pilots were designated aces. They fought also with great distinction at the Battle of Monte Cassino. They're followed by the Canadian Veterans Association and played a vital role not just in World War I and, of course, their ground forces on D-Day, but also played a vital role in the Battle of the Atlantic, the Canadian Navy helping to secure the supply routes, which were Britain's lifeline. The Not Forgotten Association. The object of the association to provide recreation and entertainment for the war wounded. And the Royal British Legion and the Royal British Legion Scotland round off this column. They were talking about the amount of money, Sophie was, that has been raised. It's interesting that not just the Royal British Legion raised money, but Help for Heroes, the Royal Star and Garter Homes, the Salvation Army, St Dunstan's all raise money. In all, it's estimated each year something like £300 million are raised for service charities. Perhaps you are not surprised if you see the crowds here and the reverence in which they're held. The Royal Naval Association, Shipmate as he's called, Jim Patterson, has been the standard bearer down in Plymouth for 20 years. They have 20,000 serving and ex-serving members with branches all over the UK and abroad. And they're followed by the Merchant Navy Association, carrying that white anchor. Vivian Foster, the national president. Her uncle died in World War II, and her father was missing for 2 years. 32,000 men and women of the Merchant Navy were lost in the war. They have no known graves, of course, but a memorial for them stands now at Tower Hill. The youngest Merchant Navy serving was 14 years old, the oldest 74. The Russian convoys, and we were hearing about Loch Ewe, and the wreath layer for them, Commander Grenfell, was at school with Jock Dempster, who was talking to us a moment ago. These are the veterans who delivered supplies to Archangel and Murmansk, of course. The Yangtze Incident for Ships Association is represented here. The famous Yangtze incident when the ship HMS Amethyst was held by the communist Chinese for over 3 months until it was able to escape under cover of darkness. A great story. The Fleet Air Arm Association, the Royal Navy's Air Force, in effect. One of the most dangerous jobs flying is flying from sea, of course. It operates now in the North Arabian Gulf. It supports the piracy operations off the coast of Somalia. 6,000 Royal Naval Air Service and Fleet Air Arm personnel gave their lives. Fleet Air Arm, the Sea Harrier Associations, the Landing Craft Association, led by Ron Smith, who we were talking to earlier. Sophie was speaking to him, who had that terrifying experience of being shelled as he came ashore. He actually killed the crew of the tanks inside the tanks, and they couldn't get them out and had to go back to Portsmouth with the tanks, with their injured and dying troops inside. A very grim, gruesome story. The Algerines Association, they're always here on parade. It's a fleet of minesweepers brought into service in 1942. More of them built than any other ship. And they were preceded by HMS Cumberland Association, the ship that was decommissioned after helping to rescue Britons just this year in June and served longer than any other ship in the Royal Navy. And the Glasgow Association here for the first time also. Queen Alexandra's Royal Naval Nursing Service Association here, led by Chief Petty Officer Craig Stradowski. Some of them served aboard the ship Uganda during the Falklands. 1884 it was the first naval nursing sisters were appointed and took the name of Queen Alexandra when she became president in 1902. VAD, the Voluntary Aid Detachment, Royal Naval Association, serving in hospitals as well. And then the Association of Wrens, disbanded now. Women serve alongside men without having their own special branch of the Royal Navy, but they were formed in 1920. The Royal Fleet Auxiliary Association, laying their wreath at the Falklands Memorial also. Their job to keep the Royal Navy equipped with food and fuel and weapons while they're at sea. The Royal Naval Communications Association follows them. And the Royal Naval School of Physical Training Association, new last year, and with their famous wreath with the word Gibraltar on it, the Royal Marines Association, in their green berets, blue berets with a red patch for those who aren't commando trained, but most of these clearly are commando trained, just back from Afghanistan, as we've been talking about earlier on. And also with them, United States Marine Corps League. There they are in red jackets and caps. United States Marine Corps League marching here because they march and serve alongside the Royal Marines in Afghanistan. And now we come to some of the civilian contingents. The Transport for London, the Bevan boys, you may spot in their white caps. The Salvation Army, offering their spiritual support and perhaps just as important, their famous cup of tea. The Bevan boys are there, the children of the Far East prisoners of war, the evacuees, the NAFI there, who on D-Day fed 500,000 troops, the Women's Royal Voluntary Service behind them. And just a reminder that these contingents are marching down here and are now, even now at this moment, going past Horse Guards. You see the Prince of Wales in the background there, and you will be able to watch this. If you push the red button, if you're watching digitally, you can see them going past here as he takes the salute. But here on Whitehall, we have to leave the march past. We've been watching a ceremony that isn't a victory parade, though many of those here have helped win important victories, which of course have changed our world. But there's been no hint of triumphalism here. This has been about remembering the 1,000 upon 1,000 who in 2 world wars and all the conflicts since, as conscripts or volunteers, fought for their country and lost their lives. And still today, in our complex world, with wars being fought that are sometimes contentious, no one doubts the courage of those who obey their orders, go to the most dangerous places on earth, support their comrades, risk, and sometimes lose their lives. All of them on this day are honored and remembered with sadness, with regret, but always with admiration and pride.
Yes, Sophie, it's incredible. We've had the very solemn and the very dignified service, and there's a very noticeable change of tone now that the veterans in the other organisations are starting to march. It's much lighter, it's lifted, and you can almost feel the pride with the people that are marching and the respect from the members of the public as they're applauding them.
I think you really can feel the pride. I mean, it's humbling to be here. It's humbling to watch all these people, young and old, walking past the Cenotaph.
As Peter Norton said earlier, it's that shared experience that bonds everyone together that's marching today, and the members of the public. I believe it shows them that the work they do is very valued, and sometimes when you are a long way away from home, it can be quite easy to forget that the general public back at home are behind the armed forces 100%, and I believe that this shows the people that are still serving that they are supported, they are backed, and they are very, very well respected.
Richie Patrick, thank you.
You may just have seen there the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers while Sophie was talking, wearing red and white roses, which they did when they were prisoners of war in Korea. And an important group behind them, the combat stress, as it's called, who try to look after people who have problems resulting from the stress of being in battle. This is a courageous attempt to try and deal with and take seriously the issue of combat stress. And the first column has gone past, and we will have a second column with the various guards regiments. But let's just join Sophie Rayworth again down there as the columns go past. Sophie.
Yes, we are right in the thick of it in Whitehall here. I'm here with Richie Puttock, who served with the Royal Marines. It is extraordinary, the atmosphere here, isn't it?
Come to see them, to pay their respects. It's fantastic to see.
And that is a very important point, isn't it? Because rounds of applause, you can hear it all the time now, and a lot of public who have turned out, who've been here since very early this morning to show their support to all these former servicemen and women.
It's hugely important to the people that have served, and I guess that because these people have been here for so long, it's hugely important to them as well. So, you know, it is fantastic to see the support that people have shown, and long may it continue.
And what about for the people who are still serving? What does this show of support mean to them?